Hello and welcome. I'm Raghav from automationstepbystep.com, and today we are going to go very basic step by step and we will learn about assertions in Cypress. So after this session you will be very confident on using assertions in Cypress. In Cypress we have two types of assertions, implicit and explicit. When we talk about implicit assertions, these are like inbuilt assertions and we do not have to actually use any assert or expect command. And generally speaking, in Cypress, when you use any command, even if you use get or contains, there is something expected in there. There is an expected condition, and if it does not fulfill the expected condition, it will fail. However, when we talk about implicit assertions, we usually use commands like should, and this command checks for the expected condition without having to use any assert or expect command separately. So these are kind of inbuilt assertions in Cypress. And when we talk about explicit assertions, these are not inbuilt, these are not referred directly, and we have to use an assert or an expect statement to run these explicit assertions. The other difference is when you run the explicit assertions, you will see result in the logs only when they fail. If they pass, they will not show up on the logs, and I will show you this along with hands-on. So for implicit assertions we have should and commands, and then explicit assertions we use expect and assert command. So let's get started and let us do hands-on on all these assertions in Cypress, and this is going to be very interesting. Let us start with step number 1. We have to create a test, and I will go to this site example.cypress.io. Let me show you this. If I go to this website example.cypress.io, this is a Cypress website for doing some testing on all these commands, and you can use this site or you can use any of your sites or any of your applications for this session. So the first thing I will do is I will go to my Visual Studio Code, and here I have my project. This is my Cypress folder. I will go to integrations folder, and let me create a new file for this session. I will create a new file and call this as assertions dot ts. Now you can also use JS. If you are using JavaScript, it will be the same. If there are any differences, I will let you know. For now I'm using a TypeScript file, so I am using the extension .ts, and here I will first create a test. So I will say IT, and then I will give the name or the title. I will say learning assertions, and then I will say function and a curly bracket start and a curly bracket stop, and here I can start writing my Cypress code. So the first thing is I will say cy.visit, and you can see I'm getting all these auto suggestion, and here I will give the URL of the application, which is this one. I will copy and paste it here, and that's it. I will save it, and now I can run Cypress. So I will say npx. I'm on my terminal of Cypress, terminal of Visual Studio Code. So you can press Ctrl and backtick key on your keyboard to bring up the terminal, or you can directly go from here and say new terminal. And now I will say npx Cypress open, and it has opened the UI of Cypress, and this is the file we want to run. That is, I do not want to go to demo folder, I want to use this assertions.ts, and here it is running the test, and yes, it goes to the example.cypress.io website. Now I also want to go to this particular get commands so that I can show you all these assertions. So for this I will use this selector playground, and I will hover over this get, and you can see I'm getting cy.get, and this is the locator. I can actually use cy.contains, and if I say get here, and yes, it is referring to this particular link, so I can copy this and go to my code, and I will paste it here, and I hope the font is fine. I can disable or I can hide this sidebar. I will press Ctrl B on my keyboard to hide the sidebar. And now after this, after cy.contains, I also want to click. So I will say dot click, and if I now save and check, yes, it is now going to that particular page. So now I can go and test the following assertions. Let us start with our implicit assertions, and in implicit we use should and command. The first thing we will learn is should contain. So I can check any element and I can check the text of the element. For example, on this page I have a button element. If I do a right click and say inspect, you can see here I can check that it contains this text or name button. So I will say here cy dot get. Now the first thing is I have to get that particular element. So if I hover over this, I can use the selector playground and I hover over this. So the ID is query button. I can just copy this and go to my code and paste this command. So this will get me that button element, and then I can say dot should. I can put this in a new line for easy readability. I will say should, and in brackets I will say contain. So this is how we use the should contain assertion, and then I will give the value which is button, and as soon as I will save, it will start execution, and you can see it has passed our assertion. Now what happens if this fails? Let me show you. If I say button 123 which is not present and should fail, you can see here it is checking for the presence, and then finally it has failed, and it gives us the response here that it has failed because this is what was expected, button 123. Also, if you see, it has timed out after 4 seconds or 4000 milliseconds, and this is very handy and useful in Cypress. You do not have to explicitly add any wait times for assertions. The default wait time is 4 seconds. So it will wait for that time before failing your assertion. However, just in case you want to add more time, you can always add the timeout. So I can go here and say timeout is I want to wait for 6 seconds. I will say 6000 milliseconds, and now if I save and run again, you will see this will now wait for 6 seconds before failing the assertion, and here you can see it has waited for 6 seconds. So this is how you can also manage the timeouts. Let me remove the timeout for now. I am good with 4 seconds, and I will also make this pass. So now everything is working fine. So we have learnt about should contain, and this is the syntax, and then we can also use should have, and here I can use with any of the property of the element like class, text, ID, HTML, etc. Let me show you. I can say I can continue on the same element, so I will say here dot should, and here I will say have dot, let me say class. If I check the class property, I will do a right click on this button and say inspect, and yes, we have a class here, and the class name is query-btn, then btn primary. I can just use query-btn here. So I will say here have class, and I will say here query-btn, and I will save and check, and yes, this is running fine. If I rerun, this is all running fine and it is pass. So I can use have with class, or I can also use with other properties like ID, text, HTML, etc. Then let us see should be. Now I can use should be with a lot of functions. I will show you here. I can say here dot should, and then I will say be, and when I say dot, you can see we have lot of functions here. I can say should be empty, should be enabled, should be false, should be frozen, should be focused. Let me try should be visible, and yes, we have should be visible, it should be not visible. And I can also say dot should, and I can say be dot I can say enabled or disabled. Yes, enabled is here. So let me save and run this, and yes, you can see everything is passing here. uh, let me see what if I say should be disabled. I will say should, and I will say be dot disabled, and when I save this, it is waiting and it has finally failed. So it is not disabled, so it has failed this. So I can use this, and then I can also say should be dot empty. I can use for elements where I can check emptiness, false, finite, focused, frozen, hidden. All this I can do. So let me just remove this one, and this is how you can use should be. So as I told you, you can use should with a lot of options: be visible, be selected, be disabled, be focused. Be focused is also equivalent to have.focus. So these are the same things. Let us see should equal. Now I can use some attribute of any element and then check it is equal to some particular value. For example, I can say here, let me take this same element here, and I will say here, I will say dot invoke, and I can say attribute. So this is how we use attribute, and I can get the attribute or the property ID, and then I can say dot should, and I can use equal here, and you can see all these options are here, and then I will say what is the ID property equal to. I know it is query-btn. I can also check from here. You can see here the ID property is query-btn. So I'm checking it here, and now if I save and run it, and you can see this is running fine. So we can use the equals, should equals, like this, and this is the example. Now I can also use and for chaining the assertions. So for example, let me try to chain two assertions. I will again use the same element, and here I can say I'm just using the existing assertions. I can say here should contain button, and then I can say dot and then I can give other assertions. Let me say I will say this have class query button, and I can keep on chaining the assertions using and. So I can say here it should contain button and should also have class query-btn. If I run this, you can see everything is passing. So all this is running fine. So and can be used for chaining assertions, and these are the implicit assertions in Cypress. Let us now move to explicit assertions, and here we have the expect and assert commands. So I can say expect and give some condition and then give the whatever is the expected result or whatever I am expecting. So I can say here, let me show you an example. So these are explicit assertions, and I am going to show you expect. The syntax is expect, and I can say whatever I want here, true dot to dot be, and whatever I am expecting here. So this is coming from chai assertions, as you can see here. So let us see, this should be fine. And if I see here, now if you see here, I'm not getting any response or anything in the logs for this particular assertion because everything is running fine. If I actually fail this assertion, I will say false, and now if I run again, you will see now we are getting the response here. So it will show you on the logs whenever there is a failure. So let me make it back to true. Now you can use it for a lot of conditions. For example, if you are getting some title or any value from your web page or your application and you want to check it if it is equal to some particular value, you can use it. So for example, I can say here, I will say let. If you are using JavaScript, you can say where, or even let should work there for the latest versions. I will say let name equals let us say Raghav, and then I can say expect name dot to dot be dot equal, and I can give the value that I'm expecting. I will say Raghav, and if I save this, you can see everything is running fine. No error means the assertion has passed. Now here I have explicitly added this. In real world, this may be coming from anywhere of your application, or maybe any text that you are storing, and then you can check if it is equal to this. Now there are a lot of things you can check. So if I show you, you can say equal to, not equal to, if it is a string, if it is true or false, if it is null, if exists, and there are so many things that you can use with the expect assertion. So this was about expect. Then let us see the assert explicit assertion in Cypress. So here I will say this is assert command, and here I can say assert dot equal. So the way we use assert command is I will say assert dot, and you can see a lot of functions we have: equal, strict equal, not equal. I will use equal here, and then in the brackets I will give the value. So this is the first or the actual value, let me say 4 here, then comma, then what is the expected value, I am again giving 4, and then I have to give the message that will be displayed in case there is an error or if it is not pass. So you can see this is the message to display on error or failure. So I will say if it fails, it should display not equal. I will save and check, and you can see everything is fine. What if there is an error or a failure? I will say 4 and 5, and I will save and check, and you can see we have got a failure, and this is printing not equal, expected 4 but it was equal to 5, and it is also giving me exactly where it is coming from. So let me make it back to 4, and then as I told you, you can do a lot of assertions with the assert command. I can say assert dot, you can see deep equals has all keys frozen if error is above, is below, is array, is false. All this we can do. Let me say strict equals. So we have a strict equal function, and it will check if it is strictly equal. So for example, if I say 4, and if I give 4 as a string here, and then the message I will give is not strictly equal, and if I save and run this, you can see it is showing me not strictly equal, expected 4 equal to 4 as a string. Now one thing also you will notice here is even before running it is showing me an error here. If I hover over, it is saying there is a type error, type string is not assignable to parameter of type number, and this is because we are using TypeScript, and therefore the type checking is done even before running. If I use this the same statement in a JavaScript file, I may not get this error. Let me show you. I will copy this statement, press Ctrl B on my keyboard to bring up the sidebar here, and let me create a file called assertions.js. So this is a JavaScript file, assertions.js, and here if I copy the same command, you can see now I am not getting any error here. So this is the difference. Type checking is done in TypeScript, and that is the major advantage of using TypeScript. Just in case you want to learn, I have a separate tutorial for TypeScript for beginners, but let me now go back and let me just make it 4 and save, and now everything is pass. So we have the assert command, and as I told you, you can use assert equal, not equal, strict equal, is above, is below, exists, not exists, true, false, is string, not a string, is number, is not a number, and so many other things we can check with the assert command. So these are the explicit assertions in Cypress, and today we learned assertions in Cypress. We looked at implicit and explicit assertions. We understood what are implicit assertions and what are explicit assertions, and we did hands-on on implicit assertions using should and and command, and on the explicit assertions we did hands-on using expect and assert. I hope now you are very confident with assertions in Cypress. Please do some more hands-on and do share your knowledge with everyone. Thank you for watching and never stop learning.